What if the glittering glamour of 1920s Paris, the city of lights, hid a darker, more insidious glow, a secret addiction that pulsed beneath the surface of its champagne bubbles and jazz rhythms, a secret woven into the very fabric of its bohemian soul? Tonight, we won't unravel that complex web of secrets, the tangled threads of addiction and despair. Instead, we will find our peace in the slow, deliberate rhythm of a single Parisian night in 1927. We will listen to the gentle tick-tock of a clock, feel the coolness of the Seine on our skin, and watch as the city slowly drifts off to sleep, unaware of the silent struggles playing out in its shadowed corner. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Snooze Stories. Now dim the lights. Let the soft murmur of the city lull you into a state of tranquil awareness as we journey back to a time when the intoxicating allure of heroin cast its spell over the heart of Paris. We will follow the path of a young woman caught in the seductive web and see how the city's nocturnal whispers shaped her destiny. The year is 1927. The air is thick with the scent of rain and the promise of forbidden pleasures, and our story begins. The year is 1927. The air, thick with the scent of rain and the promise of forbidden pleasures, hangs heavy over the cobbled streets of Paris. A gentle drizzle, a persistent whisper against the window panes, accompanies the slow, deliberate rhythm of the city's nocturnal heartbeat. The distant rumble of a passing tram blends with the murmur of hushed conversations escaping from dimly lit cafes, their windows reflecting the soft glow of street lamps. The war, a cataclysmic event that seemed to tear the world asunder just a few years prior, still casts a long shadow. The echoes of artillery fire have faded, replaced by the quieter, more insidious wounds of a shattered economy. The streets, once vibrant with the optimistic energy of the Belle Époque, now wear a different complexion, a weary exhaustion tinged with a desperate hope for a better tomorrow. This was a hope often fueled, ironically, by escape. Imagine, if you will, the weight of expectation crushing the shoulders of a young woman, Antoinette, as she navigates the uncertain landscape of post-war Paris. The war had stolen her brother, leaving a void that no amount of mourning could fill. The family's modest seamstress business, once a source of pride and stability, now struggled to keep afloat amid rampant inflation and the economic uncertainty gripping the nation. The promise of a secure future, a familiar comfort, had dissolved like morning mist. The anxieties of the time were palpable, weaving their way into the very fabric of Parisian life. The trauma of the war, a collective psychological scar, manifested in various ways, the constant fear of another conflict, the loss of loved ones, the lingering sense of instability. These were not abstract concepts, they were lived realities, shaping daily interactions and influencing personal decisions. Antoinette's circle of friends, young artists and writers, mirrored the city's collective unease. They gathered in smoky cafes, their conversations punctuated by nervous laughter and bouts of melancholy silence. Their art, often infused with the disillusionment of their generation, reflected the fractured state of the world. Amidst the canvases depicting despair and the poems laced with angst, a new form of solace began to emerge. A subtle, seductive escape from the harsh realities of their existence. The opium dens, hidden away in the labyrinthine streets of the city, offered a temporary reprieve from the harsh realities of post-war life. They were havens of hushed whispers and the intoxicating aroma of burning opium, a sanctuary from the clamor of the outside world. These dens weren't flashy, opulent affairs. They were often small, cramped spaces, sparsely furnished, their walls adorned with faded tapestries and the faint scent of incense clinging to the worn fabrics. Here, the weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by a hazy, dreamlike state, a momentary oblivion. The allure of opium wasn't merely about escaping the harsh realities of post-war Paris. It was about escaping the crushing weight of societal expectations placed upon women. Antoinette, like many women of her generation, faced a narrow range of choices. She could marry, settle down, and devote her life to raising a family, a path that felt stifling in the wake of so much loss. Or she could chase a different dream, perhaps a career in the arts, a choice fraught with uncertainty and financial insecurity. Opium offered a way to transcend these limitations, if only for a short while. The economic instability further fueled the spread of opium use. Poverty and unemployment were rampant, leaving many feeling hopeless and disillusioned. Opium, however expensive, provided a temporary escape from hunger, despair, and the grinding poverty that gripped so many Parisian families. It offered a fleeting illusion of comfort and stability. The seductive whisper of opium was further amplified by the growing artistic community's fascination with exotic cultures and the romanticized image of the opium den as a place of artistic inspiration and bohemian rebellion. This romanticized image, often perpetuated by writers and artists themselves, obscured the devastating realities of addiction. The city itself, with its labyrinthine alleys and shadowy corners, seemed to conspire in the spread of this insidious habit. The very anonymity of the nocturnal city, its ability to cloak secrets and conceal identities, fostered a culture of clandestine indulgence. The slow, deliberate pace of the night, the quiet hum of the city as it slept, became the soundtrack to Antoinette's descent. Each night, the city's nocturnal whispers seemed to draw her closer to the seductive, yet ultimately destructive, embrace of opium. The gentle tick-tock of a clock, a distant siren, the soft patter of rain against a window pane, all these sounds created a hypnotic rhythm, accompanying Antoinette on her journey into the heart of Paris's opium dream. The whispers of opium, initially faint, grew stronger, weaving themselves into the very fabric of Antoinette's existence. To understand its insidious arrival, we must journey back further, beyond the shadowed alleys and smoky dens of post-war Paris, to trace the threads of opium's presence in France, a history far older and more complex than the frenzied allure of the 1920s suggested. Opium's introduction to France wasn't a sudden event, but a gradual seep, beginning centuries earlier. It arrived as a medicinal commodity, its pain-relieving properties documented and utilized by physicians, a far cry from the clandestine dens and hushed whispers that would later define its image. The East India Company, with its vast network of trade routes, played a significant role in this introduction, its ships carrying chests laden with the dark, resinous substance across oceans, eventually reaching the bustling ports of France. Imagine the crates, stacked high in the holds, the scent of the opium, earthy, pungent, slightly sweet, mingling with the salt air and the smells of other exotic goods. The initial acceptance of opium wasn't rooted in recreational use, but in its perceived medicinal value. Pharmacopoeias listed its uses, prescribing it for a variety of ailments, from coughs and digestive troubles to more severe pains. This acceptance wasn't unique to France, it was a widespread belief across much of Europe. Apothecaries, the trusted dispensers of medicinal remedies, stocked opium preparations, often mixed with other herbs and ingredients, their dark viscous liquids held in small amber bottles. The feel of the cool glass, the subtle clink as a bottle was placed on the counter, the hushed consultations between patient and apothecary, these were mundane acts, woven into the fabric of daily life, unaware of the future they foreshadowed. The shift from medicinal use to recreational indulgence was a subtle, gradual transition. The artistic and intellectual circles of Paris, already embracing unconventional ideas and lifestyles, were among the first to explore opium's potential beyond its medicinal applications. The bohemian spirit, with its rejection of societal norms and its embrace of sensory exploration, found a curious resonance in opium's ability to alter perception, to blur the lines between reality and dream. Consider the dimly lit cafes, the scent of strong coffee mingling with the aroma of tobacco, the murmur of conversation punctuated by the clinking of glasses. In these spaces, artists and writers, fueled by restless spirits and searching for inspiration, experimented with opium, seeking a path to unlock creativity and transcend the mundane. They were pioneers, in a sense, navigating a new landscape of consciousness, albeit a dangerous one. The soft glow of gaslights filtering through stained glass windows, the hushed whispers around small tables, the clinking of silverware, the mundane details providing a sharp contrast to the altered states they sought. The romanticism surrounding opium's use amongst these groups is a crucial aspect to comprehend. The image of the opium den, often depicted in literature and art of the period, was far removed from the reality of addiction. These depictions frequently portrayed opium as a catalyst for artistic inspiration, a muse that unlocked hidden creative potential. The haze of opium, it was suggested, allowed artists to perceive the world in new and profound ways, to access deeper levels of consciousness and translate these experiences into their work. This idealized view served to mask the dangerous realities of addiction, creating a seductive aura that attracted many into its embrace. The literature of the period reflects this fascination. Novels and poems alluded to opium use, often cloaked in symbolism and allegory, hinting at the altered states of consciousness it induced. The elegant calligraphy of a manuscript, the weight of the paper, the scent of aged ink. These physical artifacts served as vessels of stories that often touched upon the seductive power of opium, transforming it from a medicinal substance into a symbol of artistic rebellion and exploration. But beneath the romanticized surface lay a darker reality. The initial acceptance of opium based on its medicinal properties and its allure among artistic circles gradually gave way to a widespread problem of addiction. This was a gradual unfolding, a subtle shift in perception, not a sudden explosion. The growing availability of opium, the increasingly prevalent use within certain social circles, and the insidious nature of addiction itself, these factors combine to create a complex and dangerous situation. The quiet desperation, the gradual erosion of control, the slow creeping descent into dependence. These were processes played out in the shadows, hidden from the casual observer. The delicate floral patterns on a porcelain opium pipe, the smooth coolness of the jade against the skin, seemingly beautiful objects holding a hidden danger. The slow, steady drip of opium onto the embers, the fragrant smoke curling upwards, the gradual dimming of the senses, a sensory experience that veiled the darker realities to come. The romanticized portrayal of opium dens within the artistic and literary circles of Paris significantly contributed to the normalization and indeed the glamorization of opium use. Imagine the illustrations in popular magazines of the time. The soft, hazy lines depicting figures reclining on plush divans, the swirling smoke of opium pipes, creating an ethereal atmosphere. These images, often rendered in muted tones of sepia and umber, imbued the act of opium smoking with an air of sophistication and mystery. The feel of the heavy embossed paper, the subtle texture of the ink, the way the light catches the highlights, all contribute to the overall seductive effect of these depictions. Think of the novels, the whispered secrets within their pages. Authors themselves, often partaking in the practice, describe the experience not as a descent into addiction, but as a journey into heightened creativity, a pathway to unlocking the subconscious mind. The weight of the bound volume in your hands, the turning of the pages, the quiet rustle of paper, these are physical sensations that accompany the unfolding of these narratives. The descriptions often focused on the sensory experience, the subtle sweetness of the opium smoke, the gentle blurring of vision, the enhanced perception of sound and color. The imagery was carefully crafted, often employing metaphors and symbolism to evoke the dreamlike state induced by the drug. The delicate script, the carefully chosen vocabulary, the subtle rhythm of the prose, all working together to create a carefully constructed illusion. Consider the paintings, the canvases depicting scenes of opium dens, often filled with figures enveloped in a hazy atmosphere. These were not depictions of squalor and despair, but rather scenes of refined decadence, where artistic figures sought refuge and inspiration. Note the brushstrokes, the subtle blending of colors, the way the artist uses light and shadow to create a mood of serene contemplation, the texture of the canvas, the slight roughness beneath the paint, the way the colors resonate under different lighting. These details contribute to the overall impact of the work. The figures were typically portrayed as relaxed, almost languid, lost in a state of blissful reverie. The artist's choice of colors, the composition of the scene, the overall mood, all carefully orchestrated to project a sense of romanticism and escapism. This aestheticization of opium use extended beyond high art to encompass popular culture. Postcards, often depicting romanticized scenes of opium dens, circulated widely, their imagery contributing to the widespread normalization of the practice. The smooth, glossy surface of the postcard, the vibrant colors, the crisp details of the printed image, all conveying a sense of allure and intrigue. These postcards, often sent as souvenirs or tokens of affection, help to disseminate the romanticized vision of opium use, subtly weaving it into the everyday fabric of Parisian life. The weight of the card in your hand, the feel of the slightly raised printing, the simple act of turning it over to read the message, each detail contributing to its impact. The music halls and cabarets of Montmartre also played a part in this process. Songs and performances often alluded to opium use, sometimes directly, sometimes obliquely, but always with a hint of glamour and excitement. The rhythmic pulse of the music, the haunting melodies, the evocative lyrics, these sensory elements worked in tandem to create a powerful and alluring atmosphere. The shimmering costumes, the soft lighting, the atmosphere of anticipation, these details contribute to the experience of the performance. The influence of the symbolist movement is particularly significant in this context. Symbolist artists and writers often explored themes of dreams, altered states of consciousness, and the exploration of the subconscious mind. The use of suggestive imagery, vague symbolism, and evocative language further reinforced the association between opium and artistic inspiration. The weight of the thick, handmade paper of a symbolist poem, the unique texture of the ink, the subtle variations in the lettering, these physical attributes enhance the reading experience. It is crucial to note that this romanticized portrayal was a deliberate construction, a carefully crafted illusion. While some artists and writers might have genuinely believed in the creative potential of opium, others were likely exploiting the allure of the drug to enhance their own image and appeal. The carefully chosen words, the evocative imagery, the subtle manipulation of the narrative, all aimed at creating a particular effect on the reader or viewer. The soft glow of a gas lamp illuminating a page of poetry, the rustle of the silk lining of a book cover, the weight of a well-loved volume. These tactile sensations are vital elements in understanding the romanticization of opium. The consequences of this glamorization were profound and far-reaching. By masking the dangerous realities of addiction, the romanticized portrayal of opium use paved the way for its widespread adoption, particularly among vulnerable individuals seeking solace or inspiration. The soft plush textures of an opium den, the gentle murmur of conversation, the dim inviting light, these sensory details create a powerfully seductive illusion. The gradual descent into addiction, the erosion of self-control, the physical and psychological toll, these were aspects largely ignored in the popular depiction of opium use. The delicate carvings on an opium pipe, the smooth texture of a jade, the subtle scent of the burning opium, these seemingly beautiful details serve as a veil for the harsh realities of addiction. This romanticized vision, however seductive, would ultimately prove to be a deceptive and destructive one. The silence of the night, the hushed breaths of the sleeping, the gentle rhythm of breathing, these are sensory elements that allow for a different perspective on the unfolding history. The slow, deliberate unfolding of this narrative mirrors the subtle process by which opium use spread throughout society, its initially seductive allure masking the insidious nature of addiction that lurked beneath. The deceptive allure of opium, meticulously crafted and disseminated through art, popular culture, and entertainment, masked a significant shift occurring within the Parisian underworld: the emergence of heroin. Consider the subtle differences, the almost imperceptible alterations in molecular structure that transformed the familiar opium poppy into a far more potent and insidious substance. The very air itself, thick with the scent of pipe smoke and Parisian nights, held a secret, a chemical metamorphosis unfolding in clandestine laboratories. The clandestine nature of these operations, the hushed whispers in darkened alleys, the furtive glances exchanged across crowded cafes, these details contribute to the sense of mystery surrounding the transformation. Opium, a complex mixture of alkaloids, had held its sway for centuries. Its effects, though undeniably intoxicating, were relatively slow to manifest. The gentle warmth spreading through the body, the languid relaxation of the muscles, the drifting into a state of dreamy reverie, these were experiences familiar to those who partook. Imagine the weight of the opium pipe in the hand, the smooth, cool jade against the skin, the subtle scent of burning resin filling the air, a sensory experience rich in tradition. The slow, deliberate act of inhaling the smoke, the gentle drawing in, the feeling of the smoke passing through the lungs, all contributing to a ritualistic experience. Heroin, however, was different. The chemical refinement process, a clandestine art perfected by increasingly sophisticated underground chemists, stripped away many of opium's components, leaving a concentrated dose of morphine. Picture the careful distillation, the meticulous filtering, the precise measurements, a process demanding skill and precision, conducted under the cloak of secrecy. The faint metallic tang in the air, the subtle hissing of chemicals reacting, the careful handling of delicate glassware. These details reveal the clandestine nature of heroin production. This process dramatically amplified the drug's potency and its addictive qualities. The rush, the immediate and intense euphoria, was unlike anything opium could offer. The swift onset, the overwhelming sense of pleasure, the rapid escalation of dependency, these were the hallmarks of heroin's insidious nature. The sharp, almost metallic taste on the tongue, the immediate rush of warmth that spreads throughout the body, the feeling of detachment from reality, all characteristic of heroin's immediate effects. The social perception of heroin initially mirrored that of its predecessor. Many initially saw it as simply a more refined, more potent form of opium. The same romanticized imagery, the same artistic renderings continued for a time. The smooth, dark sheen of heroin, the way it reflects light in a peculiar way. Its almost crystalline texture, these are subtle sensory details that might have been present in the representations of heroin at its initial emergence. But the stark reality soon began to emerge, far exceeding the subtleties of opium. The rapid escalation of addiction, the devastating physical and mental deterioration, the increased prevalence of crime associated with procuring the drug, these unveiled the brutal truth hidden beneath the veneer of romanticism. The harsh, gaunt faces of addicts, the trembling hands, the hollow eyes, stark contrast to the romanticized imagery that had previously dominated the public imagination. The weight of a used syringe, discarded in a dark alley, is a stark reminder of the brutal reality of heroin addiction. The discarded packaging, the subtle chemical smells still clinging to the remnants, all these serve as stark reminders of the drug's destructive power. The lingering smell of decay, the cold dampness of the alleyway, all contributing to a sense of despair. The transformation from opium to heroin represented more than a mere chemical alteration. It was a profound shift in the social landscape. The allure of opium, despite its inherent dangers, could be cloaked in a certain romanticism. Heroin, however, with its brutal efficiency and addiction, exposed the grim underbelly of the Parisian dream, stripping away the seductive illusions. The progression from a romanticized vision to a stark reality is mirrored in the sensory experiences associated with each stage of the addiction. The transition wasn't swift or dramatic, but subtle and insidious, like the creeping shadow of addiction itself. The slow unraveling of lives, the gradual erosion of self-respect and dignity, the increasing isolation, these were processes mirrored in the almost imperceptible shifts in the social fabric of the time. The quiet desperation in the eyes of an addict, the subtle trembling of their hands, the hesitant movements, all contributing to a sense of quiet desperation. The gentle murmur of conversation in an opium den slowly transformed into the harsh whispers and desperate pleas of those trapped in heroin's grasp. The soft glow of lamps gave way to the harsh flickering light of a gas lamp illuminating a desperate scene. The rich textures of fabrics and furniture were replaced by the stark, cold reality of impoverished surroundings. The shift from opium to heroin served as a poignant reminder that the seductive veil of romanticism could not conceal the destructive power of addiction. The slow, deliberate unraveling of lives, the gradual erosion of self-return, the desperate clinging to fleeting moments of euphoria, all culminating in a tragic conclusion. The gentle rhythm of breathing, previously associated with relaxation, now becomes ragged and shallow, reflecting the body's struggle against the drug's grip. The silence of the night, previously peaceful, now amplifies the desperation of those ensnared. The weight of the past, the burden of addiction, pressed heavily on those trapped within its destructive embrace. The quiet desperation of a life slowly fading away. The transition from the shadowy world of opium dens to the vibrant yet equally clandestine scene of Montparnasse was a subtle shift, a migration of addiction alongside the migration of artists. The bohemian spirit, the relentless pursuit of creative expression, the intoxicating blend of ambition and despair, these elements intertwine with the seductive allure of heroin, creating a potent cocktail of artistic fervor and self-destruction. Imagine the dimly lit cafes, the scent of strong coffee mingling with the subtler, almost imperceptible odor of the drug itself, a faint, sweet, almost metallic tang hanging in the air, barely noticeable unless one knew what to look for. The clatter of ceramic cups, the murmur of conversations in several languages, the scratch of charcoal on paper, the tap-tap-tap of a typewriter, these sounds form the backdrop to a silent, insidious drama unfolding in the heart of artistic Paris. Think of the artists themselves, gaunt figures hunched over their canvases, their eyes hollow yet burning with a feverish intensity, their hands trembling slightly, yet wielding brushes with a remarkable skill born of both talent and desperation. The texture of their canvases, the rough grain of the linen, the uneven application of paint, all reflecting the turmoil within. The vibrant colors, sometimes shocking in their intensity, sometimes muted and melancholic, serve as visual manifestations of the internal struggles that consume them. Consider the subtle variations in brush strokes, the deliberate layering of colors, the delicate balance between chaos and control, reflecting the inherent instability that marked their lives, the weight of a paintbrush in a trembling hand, the faint scent of turpentine mixing with the faint metallic tang of heroin in the air. These are the sensory details that paint a picture of their existence. The cafes of Montparnasse were not merely meeting places, they were crucibles where creativity and addiction were forged together in a relentless dance of inspiration and destruction. The worn wooden tables, scarred by countless cups of coffee and spilled drinks, bore silent witness to countless conversations. Deals struck in hushed tones, promises whispered amidst clouds of cigarette smoke. The weight of those tables, the subtle roughness of the wood beneath one's hand, the faint lingering scent of spilled coffee and stale tobacco, all contribute to the atmosphere of these clandestine meetings. The hushed whispers of clandestine transactions, the furtive glances exchanged across crowded rooms, the nervous energy that permeated the air. These subtle indicators pointed towards a hidden world operating beneath the surface of artistic brilliance. Consider the clinking of glasses, the subtle scraping of chairs on the floor, the hushed tones of conspiratorial conversations, all adding to the subtle symphony of intrigue, the low hum of conversation, punctuated by bursts of laughter that were as fleeting as the euphoria the drug provided. The feeling of crowded intimacy, the sense of being surrounded by a vibrant yet fragile community, bound together by both creativity and addiction. The evolution of the heroin scene in Montparnasse is not a linear narrative, but a slow and insidious creep. It began subtly, with a few artists experimenting with the drug, seeing it as a muse, an enhancer of creativity, a way to escape the pressures of the artistic world and the struggles of daily life. The initial allure, the heightened sensations, the feeling of unleashed creativity, these were powerful enticements. The initial rush, the overwhelming sense of well-being, the feeling of liberation from the constraints of reality, these transient moments fueled the initial embrace. But the dark side emerged slowly, subtly, like a creeping shadow. The initial euphoria gave way to a relentless cycle of craving, withdrawal, and relapse. The gradual deterioration of these artists is mirrored in the fading brilliance of their work. The initial burst of creativity, the vibrant colors and bold strokes, gradually gave way to a muted palette, hesitant brush strokes, and a loss of focus. The once sharp lines became blurred, the once vibrant colors faded. The gradual decline in artistic output the loss of inspiration, the inability to maintain focus, the fading brilliance of once celebrated talent, all of these reflect the insidious grip of addiction. The texture of their later works became rougher, less controlled, reflecting the inner turmoil. The weight of their canvases, once symbols of their artistic triumphs, now seemed to mirror the heavy burden of addiction. The Montparnasse connection wasn't just about individual artists, it was about a community, a subculture bound together by their shared experiences. The quiet support, the shared understanding, the sense of camaraderie among those caught in the grip of addiction. These elements played a crucial role in sustaining the cycle. The weight of shared experiences, the silent understanding between those caught in the grip of addiction, the desperate hope for escape, these are the threads that weave the fabric of this subculture. The faint, almost imperceptible scent of desperation lingering in the air, a subtle perfume of shared experience. The quiet gestures of support, the silent nods of recognition, the unspoken understanding between those bound together by shared suffering. The quiet desperation of these artists, the gradual erosion of their lives and talents, serves as a grim reminder of the insidious nature of heroin addiction. The transition from vibrant creativity to artistic sterility, the subtle shifts in their personalities, the gradual erosion of their physical and mental health, these are the quiet tragedies that unfolded in the heart of artistic paradise. The subtle changes in their appearance, the fading energy, the loss of vitality, all contribute to the story of their decline. The quiet murmur of conversations, once filled with artistic fervor, now filled with the low hum of desperation. The gentle rhythm of life, once a vibrant dance, became a slow, painful shuffle. The silent, steady decay, the gradual fading of light, these are the quiet, inescapable elements of this story. The darkness, the quiet despair, the slow, relentless erosion of hope, the final, gentle exhale. The whispers, once filled with the fervent discussions of artistic innovation, now carried a different weight, a subtle undercurrent of shared desperation. The expatriate community, a vibrant tapestry woven from diverse threads of talent and ambition, had become inextricably linked to the insidious tendrils of addiction. These were not merely artists seeking solace. They were individuals fleeing their own personal hells, finding temporary refuge in the hazy embrace of opium. Imagine the scent of Gauloise's cigarettes mingling with the faint, almost imperceptible aroma of the drug itself. A subtle, almost ethereal perfume hanging in the air of dimly lit cafes. Consider Gertrude Stein, her sharp intellect and unflinching gaze observing the unfolding tragedy with a detached curiosity. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap of her typewriter, a constant companion in her Parisian apartment, became a counterpoint to the hushed coughs and stifled groans of those succumbing to the drug's allure. The weight of her words, often sparse yet potent, took on a new meaning in light of the pervasive addiction surrounding her. The cool smoothness of her writing desk, the steady pressure of her fingers on the keys, a stark contrast to the trembling hands of her increasingly debilitated companions. Then there's Hemingway, his rugged masculinity masking a vulnerability only hinted at in his clipped prose. The feel of the worn leather of his writing chair, the scratch of his pen against paper, the rhythmic creak of the floorboards beneath his feet, all these familiar textures were now shadowed by the unseen weight of his dependence. The simple act of writing, once a source of strength and self-expression, gradually became a struggle, his words reflecting the fading clarity of his mind, the rough texture of his manuscript, the barely legible scrawl of his later writings, a stark contrast to the confident strokes of his earlier works. Across the spectrum of artistic expression, the influence of opium was pervasive. The vibrant hues of a Matisse painting, once exploding with life and energy, might slowly dull, the brush strokes becoming hesitant, uncertain. The smooth surface of the canvas, previously a testament to effortless skill, now bears the subtle imperfections of a failing hand, the faint tremor betraying the grip of addiction. The weight of the canvas, once a symbol of artistic triumph, now seems to bear the burden of the artist's failing health. the rich textures of a Picasso Cubist masterpiece, meticulously constructed with intricate layers and sharp lines, could gradually lose their precision, the bold strokes softening, the angles blurring. The rough texture of his canvases, once a testament to his revolutionary style, seemed to reflect the growing chaos within him. The cafes themselves, once vibrant hubs of creative energy, became eerie repositories of shared secrets and unspoken suffering. The polished surface of the cafe tables, usually gleaming under the soft light, might bear the faint stains of spilled drinks, the marks etched by careless hands weakened by the drug. The weight of the tables, once a symbol of lively conversation, now seemed to represent the heavy burden of addiction that rested upon these artists. The clatter of cups and saucers, once a lively accompaniment to conversation, now sounded hollow, a discordant note in the symphony of despair. The hushed whispers of conversations, once filled with intellectual debate, now carried the weight of unspoken fears and desperation. The familiar aroma of coffee and pastries, usually comforting and inviting, now carried a faint undertone of decay and despair. The shared experiences forged within this expatriate community created a complex web of support and enabling. The quiet exchange of glances, the furtive gestures of understanding, the unspoken pact of shared secrecy, all contributed to the perpetuation of the cycle. The subtle shift in body language, the quiet glances of recognition, the unspoken pact of silence, all contributed to the community's sense of isolation and complicity. The sense of belonging, the camaraderie found in shared suffering, ironically served to reinforce the grip of addiction. The unspoken understanding, the shared complicity, the quiet acceptance, these were the invisible threads that bound the community together, a grim tapestry woven from despair and dependency. The weight of the shared secret, the burden of addiction, served to further isolate these talented individuals, pushing them further into the shadows. The intimate spaces of their studios and apartments, once vibrant with creativity, now held the silent witness of their struggles. The smooth surface of their easels, once supporting masterpieces, bore the marks of their deterioration. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap of their typewriters, once a symphony of inspiration, now a lonely echo in the quiet hours of the night. The gradual fading of their once brilliant light, the slow erosion of their talents, the quiet despair that permeated their lives. These were the unseen narratives, woven into the very fabric of 1920s Paris. The subtle erosion of their health, the fading of their vitality, the quiet desperation in their eyes. These were the invisible threads that connected them. A community bound by both shared success and shared tragedy. The quiet desperation, the fading brilliance, the insidious decay, this was the hidden cost of Paris's opium dream. The subtle shifts in their demeanor, the fading energy in their movements, the loss of luster in their eyes, all silent testaments to their silent suffering. The quiet murmur of their once vibrant conversations, now a low hum of despair, a quiet testament to their collective decline. The subtle shift in their art, the muted palette, the hesitant brushstrokes, the blurring lines, all reflected the fading light of their life. The slow, steady decline, the gradual fading of their light, these were the inescapable elements of this sad narrative. The weight of their legacy, a mixture of breathtaking achievement and tragic downfall, lingers still. The final, gentle sigh. The cafes of Paris, those hallowed halls of intellectual and artistic discourse, became unwitting accomplices in this tragic drama. The polished mahogany of the tables, usually gleaming under the soft gaslight, often bore the faint rings left by opium pipes. Subtle blemishes on a surface that had witnessed countless passionate debates and clandestine meetings. The aroma of strong coffee and rich pastries, normally a comforting fragrance, now mingled with the faint, sweet scent of burning opium, a subtle but persistent reminder of the hidden vice that permeated the air. The clatter of cups and saucers, usually a cheerful symphony of social interaction, often softened to a muted murmur as conversations drifted into hushed, conspiratorial whispers. The familiar sounds of cafe life, the rhythmic clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, all became subtly altered, imbued with a sense of underlying tension and secrecy. The weight of the air itself seemed heavier, thick with unspoken anxieties and shared secrets. Consider the Café de la Rotonde, a haven for artists and writers. Its walls, adorned with countless sketches and scribbled poems, bore silent witness to countless exchanges, both creative and illicit. The chipped paint on the bar, the worn leather of the chairs, the faded tapestry on the walls, all carried the imprint of countless nights filled with intoxicating creativity and debilitating addiction. Imagine the texture of the bar top, smooth and cool to the touch, yet bearing the subtle imprint of countless hands, some steady and sure, others trembling and unsteady, their strength sapped by the relentless grip of addiction. The cafe's proprietor, a shrewd observer of human nature, undoubtedly knew the nature of some of his patrons' habits. He likely saw the subtle shifts in their demeanors, the vacant stares, the erratic movements, the pallor of their skin. He may have turned a blind eye, or perhaps even facilitated the transactions, aware of the lucrative nature of the clientele he served. The silence of his observation, a tacit acceptance of the situation, added another layer to the complex web of complicity. The hushed corners of the cafe, typically reserved for intimate conversations, became havens for discreet transactions. The furtive exchange of small packages, the swift transfer of money, the quiet nods of understanding, all took place under the guise of ordinary cafe chatter. The weight of secrecy hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that added to the already charged atmosphere. Beyond the cafes themselves, private gatherings in rented rooms and artist studios played a significant role. These were spaces where the veil of discretion was even thinner, where the addiction could be indulged without the pretense of social camouflage. The flickering candlelight, casting long shadows on the walls, illuminated the intimate gatherings, revealing the faces of men and women consumed by their habit. The soft tap-tap-tap of a typewriter, often a soundtrack to artistic creation, sometimes served as a cover for the rhythmic rasp of an opium pipe. The rich textures of the tapestries or rugs underfoot, normally luxurious and comforting, became almost ironic against the stark reality of the situation. The shared experience of addiction within these artistic circles fostered a complex dynamic. While the camaraderie offered a sense of belonging, it also served to reinforce the cycle of dependence, the unspoken understanding, the tacit acceptance, the shared complicity. These created an isolating environment that made it more difficult to break free. The smooth surface of a silver opium pipe, cool to the touch, became a chilling symbol of this hidden world. Its delicate curves, its intricate details, belied the destructive power it held. The faint residue of opium, clinging to the pipe's surface, was a tangible reminder of the insidious nature of the addiction. The weight of the pipe, light yet significant, represented the burden these artists carried. The conversations that unfolded in these spaces were as varied and complex as the individuals themselves. Some discussions likely revolved around the artistic process, the search for inspiration, the pursuit of beauty. Others descended into desperate pleas for another fix, whispered confessions of failure, or bitter complaints about the relentless grip of addiction. The subtle shifts in tone, the strained voices, the haunted eyes, all betrayed the underlying desperation. The shared suffering created a unique form of intimacy, a bond forged in the crucible of shared addiction. Yet this intimacy was often a double-edged sword, reinforcing the isolation and fostering a sense of complicity that perpetuated the cycle of dependency. The quiet desperation, the unspoken fears, the shared secrets, these formed a subtle yet powerful current that flowed beneath the surface of Parisian café society. The rich tapestry of Parisian life, with its vibrant colors, its intoxicating energy, its endless possibilities, was interwoven with the darker threads of opium addiction. The cafes, those vibrant hubs of artistic creation and intellectual discourse, played a crucial role in this tragic narrative, unwittingly facilitating the exchange, concealing the suffering, and ultimately contributing to the downfall of many talented individuals. The subtle erosion of their health, the fading of their brilliance, the quiet desperation in their eyes, these were the unseen elements, the silent witnesses of this hidden chapter in Paris's history. The slow, steady decline, the gradual fading of their light. These were the undeniable truths etched into the very fabric of the Parisian café scene, a truth lingering still in the lingering aroma of coffee and the faintest, sweetest scent of opium long gone. The quiet desperation, the unspoken fears, the shared secrets, these formed a subtle yet powerful current that flowed beneath the surface of Parisian café society. But this hidden current did not originate within the cafés themselves. It flowed from a deeper, darker source, the intricate networks of criminal organizations that controlled the supply of heroin. These weren't the flamboyant gangsters of popular imagination, but rather shadowy figures who operated in the city's underbelly, their activities veiled in secrecy and shrouded in the anonymity of the Parisian night. Imagine the hushed conversations in dimly lit back rooms, the furtive glances exchanged across crowded streets, the coded messages whispered in the labyrinthine alleyways. These were the spaces where deals were struck, alliances forged, and betrayals enacted. The weight of a small, carefully wrapped package containing the potent drug held a significance far beyond its physical dimensions. It represented power, wealth, and the potential for both ruin and escape. The texture of the paper, perhaps rough and slightly worn, held the faint scent of the opium it concealed, a scent that lingered on the fingertips of those who handled it, a silent testament to the illicit trade. The distribution wasn't a singular, centralized operation. It was a complex web of interconnected individuals, each playing a specific role in the chain of supply. Think of a vast network of capillaries, branching out from a central point, reaching into every corner of the city. There were the importers, often foreign nationals with connections to opium-producing regions, who smuggled the raw materials into France, evading customs officials with practiced ease. Their methods were as varied and inventive as the individuals themselves. Hidden compartments in ships, false-bottomed suitcases, carefully disguised packages, all served as tools of their clandestine trade. Then there were the wholesalers, those who received the imported goods and divided them into smaller quantities, ready for distribution to a wider network of street-level dealers. These individuals operated with a level of calculated risk, constantly aware of the ever-present threat of police raids and rival gangs. The quiet rustle of banknotes, the clinking of coins in darkened rooms, the nervous energy palpable in every transaction. These were the hallmarks of their clandestine business. Their dealings were often conducted in hushed tones, their faces obscured by shadows, their movements swift and deliberate. Finally, there were the street-level dealers, the most visible, yet arguably the most vulnerable members of the network. They occupied the fringes of society, operating from dimly lit bars, smoky back rooms, and shadowy corners of the city. Their clientele ranged from the desperate addict seeking a fleeting escape to the curious dilettante experimenting with the drug's intoxicating allure. The subtle exchange of a small packet for a few francs, the quick furtive glance over a shoulder, the immediate departure, these were the rituals of this silent exchange. The consequences of this widespread heroin trade were profound and far-reaching. It fueled a cycle of addiction that ravaged lives, tearing families apart and leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The city's hospitals overflowed with patients suffering from the devastating effects of the drug. Their bodies weakened, their minds clouded, their spirits broken. The streets themselves became a reflection of this silent epidemic, filled with individuals whose lives had been consumed by their addiction, their bodies ravaged, their souls lost. The police struggled to contain the situation. Their resources were limited, their methods often ineffective. The clandestine nature of the trade made it difficult to track down the main players, to dismantle the networks responsible for supplying the drug. The constant game of cat and mouse between law enforcement and the criminal organizations resulted in an endless cycle of arrests, convictions, and relapses. The weight of this futile struggle pressed down heavily on the city's authorities, a palpable reminder of the limits of their power. The societal impact extended beyond the individuals directly affected by addiction. Families were torn apart, livelihoods destroyed, and the moral fabric of the city strained. The economic costs were substantial, with increased demands on healthcare systems, social welfare programs, and law enforcement resources. The very essence of Parisian life, with its vibrancy and energy, was subtly yet undeniably altered by the shadow of the heroin trade. The scent of opium, a faint sweet aroma, mingled with the smells of the city. The perfume of a flower, the scent of baking bread, the exhaust fumes of a car, creating a strange, unsettling counterpoint to the reality of Parisian life. The slow drip of this poisonous substance into the veins of the city left an indelible mark, a stain on its rich tapestry of history. The silent suffering, the quiet desperation, the lingering aroma, these are the elements that constitute this hidden chapter in Paris's story. The weight of this history hangs heavy in the air, a subtle yet undeniable presence, a silent testament to the devastation wrought by this illicit trade. The smooth surface of a silver spoon, perhaps used to measure a dose, is now just another element in the silent narrative, its reflective surface mirroring a distorted, fragmented reality, its cool metal a stark contrast to the fiery chaos it facilitated. The slow, deliberate rustle of a crumpled franc note, discarded after a transaction, becomes the somber soundtrack to this untold tale. The faint, almost imperceptible trace of opium, clinging to the fabric of a worn coat, speaks volumes about the hidden lives, the broken dreams, the quiet despair. The scent of opium, faint and sweet, clung to the air, a ghostly perfume mingling with the usual Parisian scents, the perfume of a woman, the scent of freshly baked bread from a nearby boulangerie, the exhaust fumes of a passing motor car. But this scent, this subtle whisper of addiction, carried with it the weight of untold stories. Stories largely untold. Stories of the women caught in the web of heroin's allure. Their experiences, often overlooked in the broader narrative, offer a unique perspective on this dark chapter of Parisian history. Consider for a moment the elegant Madame de Bois, a woman of means whose life seemingly held all the promise of Parisian high society. She frequented the grand cafes, adorned herself in the finest silks, and moved within circles of artists and intellectuals. Yet, beneath the veneer of sophistication, a hidden struggle unfolded. The initial experimentation, perhaps a fleeting escape from the pressures of societal expectations, gradually spiraled into a dependence she found impossible to break. The quiet rustle of her silk gown, once a symbol of her refined lifestyle, became a muted accompaniment to the trembling of her hands as she prepared her dose. The subtle shimmer of her jewelry, once a source of pride, now reflected the hollowed-out spaces in her eyes. The taste of fine wine, once enjoyed with cultivated relish, was replaced by the bitter taste of addiction. Her story, sadly common amongst women of her class, speaks of a hidden world of addiction within the gilded cages of Parisian society. Then there were the women of the working class, those whose lives were already fraught with hardship and poverty. For them, heroin offered a temporary respite from the harsh realities of their daily existence. The grinding poverty, the relentless struggle for survival, the lack of opportunity, these factors created a fertile ground for addiction. The faint scent of cheap perfume, attempting to mask the odor of poverty, would often be overcome by the ever-present aroma of opium, clinging to their clothes, their hair, their very skin. The rough texture of their worn clothing, a testament to their laborious lives, offered little comfort as they sought solace in the drug's embrace. The chipped paint on the walls of their cramped apartments, the worn-out furniture, the flickering gaslight, all formed a backdrop to their desperate attempts to escape their harsh realities. Their stories, etched in the lines of their faces, their weary eyes, their worn hands, tell of resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. These women from different social strata shared a common experience, the insidious grip of addiction. But their journeys, their methods of coping, and their ultimate fates were shaped by the societal structures that surrounded them. For women of the upper classes, addiction was often treated as a personal failing, a weakness to be hidden and dealt with privately. The hushed conversations, the furtive glances, the attempts to maintain a semblance of normalcy, all masked the devastation wrought by the drug. They sought treatment, often in expensive sanatoriums, But the stigma attached to addiction frequently hampered their recovery. The weight of societal expectations, the fear of social ostracism, often hindered their ability to seek help openly. The working-class women faced different challenges. The lack of access to quality health care, the stigma surrounding addiction, and the absence of a social safety net made their path to recovery far more difficult. Their struggles were compounded by poverty, violence, and the societal prejudice they faced. The harshness of their lives, intensified by addiction, created a cycle of dependency that was often difficult to escape. The women's experiences within the context of the broader heroin trade are also significant. Some were drawn into the network as users, their addiction fueling the demands of the market. Others became unwitting participants, their vulnerabilities exploited by those who profited from the drug trade. Still others found themselves caught in the crossfire of rival gangs, their lives threatened by the violence inherent in the illicit drug industry. The hushed whispers in darkened rooms, the furtive meetings in dimly lit alleys, the hushed tones of clandestine transactions, these formed the backdrop to their perilous existence. The worn leather of a dealer's satchel, the cool metal of a syringe, the crumpled banknotes exchanged in the shadows, these objects became silent witnesses to their harrowing realities. The stories of these women, often hidden from the official accounts of the era, reveal a multifaceted picture of addiction and its impact on individuals and society. Their experiences, marked by resilience, despair, and a quiet strength, offer a poignant reminder of the human cost of the heroin craze that swept through 1920s Paris. The faint scent of opium, the lingering echo of their whispered confessions, the subtle traces left behind on their worn clothes and belongings, all these serve as fragile reminders of their untold stories, a testament to the silent suffering endured by women within the shadows of Paris's opium dream. The slow, deliberate drip of a single drop of liquid, the almost imperceptible weight of a single grain of powder, the quiet rustle of a crumpled note. These become the symbols of their individual struggles and a testament to their quiet dignity in the face of immense hardship. The weight of their silent suffering hangs heavy, a subtle yet potent presence in the overall narrative. Their presence, so often ignored, is now finally acknowledged and remembered, as the sound of their story, softly whispered, fades into the quiet stillness of the night. The weight of their silent suffering, a tangible presence even now, leads us to consider the medical understanding of the time. The doctors, the men in their starched white coats, peering through their spectacles, what did they truly understand of the affliction gripping these women? Their knowledge, advanced for its time in many respects, yet remained remarkably limited when confronted with the insidious nature of opium addiction. The sterile scent of antiseptic in their consulting rooms, a stark contrast to the lingering aroma of opium clinging to the clothes of their patients, offered little solace. The gleam of polished brass instruments, the smooth coolness of the examination table, these provided a fleeting sense of order in the face of the chaotic reality of addiction. The prevailing medical wisdom of the 1920s viewed addiction in most cases as a moral failing, a weakness of character. The crisp official reports meticulously filed away in their leather-bound volumes often reflected this perspective. The precise script, the methodical detailing of symptoms, the clinical detachment, all conveyed an underlying judgment. The documents themselves, with their aged paper and faded ink, whisper of a time when the scientific understanding of addiction lagged behind the societal stigma. The weight of these documents, the tangible presence of their collected knowledge, speaks volumes about the limitations of the era's medical approach. Treatment options were at best rudimentary. The feel of a cold compress on a feverish brow, the bitter taste of prescribed medications, the restrictive nature of confinement, these constituted the majority of interventions. Sanatoriums, often luxurious havens for the wealthy, offered little more than isolation and rest. The high ceilings, the ornate moldings, the carefully arranged furniture, all served as a backdrop to the quiet despair of those confined within their walls. The crisp, starched linens, the polished silverware, the meticulously prepared meals, a stark contrast to the lives many of these women had left behind. For the working class, however, Even these meager options were unavailable. The harsh reality of their lives, the absence of a robust social safety net, left them with little recourse but to endure their suffering in silence. The cold, damp floors of their cramped dwellings, the worn-out blankets, the meager meals, these represented the harshness of their existence, compounded by the devastating effects of addiction. The medical community's limited understanding of the neurochemical processes involved in addiction meant that treatments were often ineffective and sometimes even harmful. The precise weight of a single dose of medication, measured out on a delicate scale, offered little comfort. The smooth texture of a pill, the subtle taste, the quiet promise of relief, often proved to be an illusion. The limitations of the medical interventions reflected the broader societal misunderstandings surrounding addiction. The societal narratives surrounding addiction were often simplistic, failing to account for the complex interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors. The rigid structure of societal expectations, the narrow perspectives of the medical profession, the absence of effective public health initiatives, all contributed to a landscape in which addiction was treated as a personal failing rather than a complex medical condition. The sterile environment of a laboratory, with its precise instruments and controlled experiments, offered a different perspective. The scent of chemicals, the precise measurements, the meticulous recordings, all represent an attempt to understand the underlying mechanisms of addiction. The detailed charts, painstakingly crafted, reveal the efforts of scientists to unravel the complexities of the body's response to opiates. However, even within this scientific realm, the limitations of the era's technology and understanding hampered progress. The subtle changes in brain chemistry, the intricate interplay of neurotransmitters, these remained largely unknown. The precise weight of a scientific finding, the meticulous nature of the research, the slow accumulation of knowledge all represented the painstaking process of understanding addiction. The scientific discoveries of the time, while providing valuable insights, were insufficient to address the widespread problem of addiction that was gripping Paris. The quiet rustle of papers, the gentle turning of pages, the hushed whispers of doctors in consultation, these sounds represent the unfolding of a medical understanding that, while evolving, remained largely inadequate to address the scale of the crisis. The lack of effective treatments, the pervasive social stigma, the limited understanding of the underlying biological mechanisms, all contributed to the suffering of countless individuals. The faint scent of medical supplies, the muted sounds of a busy hospital, the quiet desperation of patients. These details reveal the limitations of the medical response. The weight of this medical inadequacy, compounded by societal prejudice, underscores the depth of the problem. The slow, methodical progress of medical research, the gradual unveiling of the intricate biology of addiction, this long and arduous journey reveals the true complexity of understanding and treating such a devastating condition. The meticulous nature of medical practice, the precise measurements, the careful observations, all point to an era in which medicine was striving to catch up with the complexities of the human experience. And so the story of these women, their suffering, their struggles, and the limitations of the medical response remains a stark reminder of the need for a more comprehensive understanding of addiction and the importance of compassion and effective treatment. The faint scent of carbolic acid, a sterile, almost metallic tang, hangs in the air of the clinic. It's a smell that clings to the starched white coats of the doctors, a subtle reminder of the limitations of their craft. Their instruments, gleaming under the weak gaslight, reflect the hesitant steps of a nascent medical understanding. A hypodermic needle, slender and sharp, rests on a tray beside a small vial filled with a cloudy liquid. A concoction meant to ease the withdrawal symptoms, a temporary balm on a deeper wound. The gentle clink of glass against glass, the quiet rustle of the doctor's notes, the rhythmic drip of a leaky faucet. These sounds form a subdued soundtrack to the silent suffering of the patients. For many, the initial step was confinement. The cold, smooth surfaces of the sanatorium walls, the distant echo of footsteps in the long corridors, the muted sounds of other patients suffering in the adjacent rooms. These details create an atmosphere of enforced solitude. The heavy oak doors, meticulously carved with intricate designs, serve as both a barrier to the outside world and a symbol of the patient's entrapment. The weight of the door, the resistance to its movement, represents the psychological and physical struggles of those confined within. The heavy velvet curtains, rich in texture and dark in color, further enhance the sense of isolation, absorbing sounds and softening light, creating a space of subdued and melancholic quietude. The treatment protocols were as varied as the patients themselves. One might find solace in the rhythmic routine of hydrotherapy, the soothing warmth of the water, the gentle pressure of the jets, the feeling of being cleansed both physically and spiritually, the cool, smooth tiles beneath their bodies, the calming murmur of the water, the subtle aroma of the purifying agents. These sensory experiences offered a momentary respite from the torment of withdrawal. Others were subjected to a regimen of prescribed medications, bromides to calm the nerves, morphine itself in carefully measured doses, a vicious cycle of dependency masked as treatment. The chalky texture of the pills, the bitter taste lingering on the tongue, the brief period of respite followed by the inevitable relapse. These were the realities of the treatments that were available. The precise weight of a dose, measured with exacting care, offered a small measure of control in a world of chaos, an illusion of order in the midst of debilitating dependency. For those wealthy enough, the luxurious sanatoriums offered a gilded cage. The soft pile of the carpets underfoot, the hushed whispers of the nurses, the distant strains of a piano, all formed a backdrop to the silent desperation. The ornate chandeliers, casting their soft glow on the polished floors, created an atmosphere of deceptive calm. The carefully arranged bouquets of flowers, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the pallor of the patients, served as a subtle reminder of the beauty of life that was beyond their reach for the moment. But for the majority, those of the working class, treatment was a distant dream. The reality was stark and unforgiving. The cold dampness of their cramped lodgings, the incessant coughs and aches, the gnawing hunger, the rough texture of their threadbare blankets, the metallic taste of cheap coffee, the lingering scent of poverty. These harsh realities compounded their suffering. Their only refuge was often the quiet despair of their own company, their only solace the fleeting illusion of escape that only the opiate could offer. The evolving scientific understanding of addiction, still in its infancy, offered little hope. The sterile environment of the laboratory, with its glass beakers and precise measuring instruments, held the promise of progress, yet the progress was slow. The meticulous recordings in lab notebooks, filled with careful observations, detailed the subtle effects of opiates on the nervous system. The faint scent of chemicals, the precise measurements, the meticulous recordings, they reflect an era of striving, yet of considerable limitations in both understanding and effective intervention. The limitations of the era extended beyond medical understanding. The social stigma surrounding addiction was profound, reinforcing isolation and perpetuating a cycle of suffering. The whispers and judgment of society, the lack of compassion, the absence of meaningful support, these added layers of anguish to the already overwhelming burden of disease. The rigid moral judgments, the societal rejection, the absence of understanding, all created a wall of silence, keeping sufferers isolated and ashamed. The echoes of these struggles resonate even now, whispering in the faded documents, the aged photographs, the faint traces of the scent of carbolic acid. The story of those women, their suffering, their resilience, serves as a somber reminder of a time when treatment lagged far behind the need, and where society failed to provide the compassion and understanding that were desperately needed. The faintest whisper of their stories, their struggles, echoes across the years, a testament to the enduring human spirit and the long and arduous journey towards a greater understanding of addiction and effective treatment. The silence, however, reminds us that the path to true healing is complex and long, requiring more than just medical advancements, but a change of heart, a compassionate embrace of the suffering, and a recognition of the interconnectedness of body, mind, and spirit in the tapestry of human experience. And as we understand these silent stories, may we rest, and may our sleep be peaceful. The silence, however, held more than the echoes of suffering. It held the whispers of creativity, a counterpoint to the despair. For within those gilded cages and cramped lodgings, amidst the physical and emotional turmoil, a potent brew of experience was fermenting, finding its expression in the art and literature of the era. The opiate haze, distorting perception and amplifying emotion, became a lens through which the artists of the time viewed the world, their creations reflecting the anxieties, the alienation, and the distorted beauty of their experience. Consider the paintings, for instance. The brush strokes, sometimes hesitant, sometimes frenzied, mirror the erratic nature of addiction itself. The colors, often muted and melancholic, reflecting the pervasive gloom, yet occasionally bursting with an almost hallucinatory vibrancy, hinting at the fleeting moments of euphoria that punctuated the depths of despair. The textures, rough and uneven in places, smooth and almost ethereal in others, echo the physical sensations of the drug's effects. The cold clamminess of withdrawal, juxtaposed with the fleeting warmth of the high. Imagine the artist's hand, trembling slightly, yet somehow guiding the brush across the canvas, translating the internal turmoil into visible form, the faint scent of oil paint, the subtle grain of the canvas under the fingertips, the weight of the brush, each a tactile element contributing to the work's creation, a reflection of the artist's physical state. Some canvases seem to pulse with a dark energy, a visceral representation of the internal struggle, while others emanate a haunting stillness, a capture of the profound isolation experienced by those trapped in their addiction. The literature of the period is equally compelling. The rhythm and cadence of the prose, often deliberately slow and measured, mirroring the deliberate pace of the opiate's effects. The imagery, rich and evocative, transporting the reader into a world of distorted perceptions and heightened senses. The language, at times precise and clinical, at other times hazy and dreamlike, reflects the fluctuating mental state of the writer, their struggle to articulate the inarticulable. Imagine the writer's fingers tracing the lines on the paper, their pen scratching across the page, leaving behind a trail of ink that mirrors their inner struggle. The rough texture of the paper, the scent of ink, the weight of the pen, all physical elements contributing to the creative process. Some works are marked by a sense of unrelenting despair, while others flicker with moments of unexpected beauty, a testament to the duality of experience that addiction creates. The faint scent of old paper, the brittle texture of aged pages, whisper the stories of those who lived through this era. The poetry, too, offers a powerful window into the lives of those affected. The lines, sometimes fragmented and disjointed, mirroring the fractured nature of their minds. The metaphors, striking and unexpected, reflecting their altered perceptions. The rhythm, sometimes erratic and unpredictable, other times strangely hypnotic, echoing the chaotic and unpredictable nature of their addiction. Imagine the poet's voice, whispering the words, their breath catching in their throat, the rhythm of their speech reflecting the irregular rhythm of their heartbeat, the gentle whisper of their voice, the soft texture of their clothing, the subtle changes in their demeanor. These are all sensory details that contribute to the understanding of their creation. The rhythm of their verses, the cadence of their voice, the rhythm of their heartbeat, the poetic expression, a reflection of a fragmented yet powerful reality. Sculpture, too, holds its own silent narrative. The forms, sometimes fluid and expressive, sometimes rigid and constrained, reflect the conflicting forces at play within the individual. The textures, smooth and polished in places, rough and unfinished in others, mirroring the contrast between moments of euphoria and despair. Imagine the sculptor's hands, shaping the clay, their touch conveying the internal tension, the struggle between order and chaos, the cool, smooth texture of the clay, the weight of the material in their hands, the subtle changes of texture from smooth to rough, echoing the turmoil they are expressing. Each sculpture a testament to resilience, a frozen moment of profound emotional and physical experience. The creative output of this era, far from being a simple byproduct of addiction, serves as a powerful testament to the human capacity for resilience and a haunting reminder of the social and personal costs of unchecked addiction. The art itself, the paintings, the literature, the poetry, the sculpture, all bear witness to the silent struggles, the intense emotions, and the profound human experience of those who lived through this turbulent time. And as we consider these silent narratives, let us drift further into the tranquil embrace of slumber. The echoes of these artistic expressions now fading into the comforting quiet of the night. And yet, beyond the artistic echoes lie the voices themselves. Fragmented, often unreliable, yet undeniably powerful, these whispered accounts offer a glimpse into the heart of the Parisian opiate crisis. Imagine, if you will, the hushed tone of a confession, shared in the dim light of a smoky cafe, the clinking of glasses a distant counterpoint to the tremor in the speaker's voice. One such voice belonged to a young woman, a seamstress named Antoinette. Her testimony, discovered tucked away in a forgotten archive, recounts her descent into addiction with a chilling simplicity. The initial allure she described was a soothing balm against the relentless pressure of her work. The long hours bending over needle and thread, the constant ache in her back, the gnawing hunger in her belly. The heroine, at first, silenced the clamor of her existence, replaced the gnawing emptiness with a deceptive sense of peace. She speaks of the smooth, cool touch of the needle against her skin, the almost imperceptible sting as the opiate entered her bloodstream, a sensation she likened to a gentle caress, a soothing whisper against the cacophony of her life. The scent of the drug, faint and almost sweet, lingers in her recollection, a phantom smell clinging to the edges of her memory, the slow, languid warmth that spread through her body, a welcome respite from the constant cold of the Parisian winter, a deceptive promise of eternal comfort. Later, the accounts become increasingly fractured. The hazy recollections, like wisps of smoke curling upwards, are punctuated by moments of clarity, flashes of desperate self-awareness. The chilling descriptions of withdrawal paint a vivid picture of physical and emotional torment. The bone-deep aches, the incessant shivering, the relentless nausea, the gnawing emptiness that seemed to consume her entire being. The texture of her skin, she recalled, became rough and dry, her lips cracked and bleeding, her eyes sunken and hollow. The sounds of her suffering, the racking coughs, the groaning moans, the whispered pleas for relief, haunt the pages. Another voice emerges from the shadows, that of a struggling artist, Jean-Pierre. His account, scrawled in a shaky hand on scraps of paper, offers a different perspective, a blend of self-loathing and resigned acceptance. He describes the initial creative surge, the hallucinatory clarity that the drug bestowed upon him, the way colors seemed to vibrate with an almost unbearable intensity, the heightened sensory experience that allowed him to capture the essence of his subjects. The texture of the canvas, he said, seemed to change under his touch, becoming almost alive. The scent of paint, usually comforting, became an overwhelming assault on his senses, a symbol of the chaos that reigned within him. However, this creative frenzy was a fleeting illusion. The prolonged use, he confessed, ultimately stifled his creativity, leaving him trapped in a cycle of addiction, his artistic vision blurred and distorted. The cold, clammy sweat clinging to his skin during the withdrawal phase contrasted sharply with the fleeting warmth of the high. The tremors in his hands, he recalls, made even holding the paintbrush an almost insurmountable task. The texture of the paper beneath his trembling hand became increasingly important as a grounding influence. A doctor's notes, discovered among the same fragmented archives, offer a more clinical perspective, documenting the physical effects of the addiction, the progressive deterioration of the body, the heartbreaking vulnerability of those trapped in its grip. The cold, clinical language is in stark contrast to the raw, emotional accounts of the addicts themselves. The meticulous detail, however, underscores the pervasive nature of the problem, the sheer scale of the human cost. Each entry, a stark reminder of the relentless physical toll of addiction. These fragments of lives, these whispered confessions, these medical observations, collectively paint a powerful portrait of a generation grappling with addiction. The texture of their experiences, woven together, creates a rich, complex tapestry of despair, resilience, and ultimately, the enduring human capacity for hope. Even in the face of such overwhelming adversity, there were moments of unexpected kindness. fleeting instances of human connection that momentarily pierce the darkness, offering a glimpse of light. Let us now consider the stories of those who sought solace and refuge in the embrace of community, finding support within networks of fellow sufferers, a whisper of solidarity, a shared understanding of the suffering, a fragile but essential network of human connection, allowing them to navigate the treacherous waters of addiction together. The gentle touch of a friend's hand, the warmth of a shared meal, the quiet strength of collective resilience. These fragmented stories, pieced together, create a collage of human experience, a testament to the power of compassion and the indomitable spirit of the human heart. And as these voices fade into the quiet of the night, allow yourself to be enveloped in the peaceful silence, drifting further into the comforting embrace of sleep. The whispers of the past, now fading memories, their echoes a gentle lullaby, guiding you towards a restful slumber. The weight of the day lifting, replaced by the soothing blanket of sleep. The soft texture of your bedding, the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the rhythmic beat of your heart. Sleep now. And as these voices fade into the quiet of the night, the question remains, how did society view this burgeoning crisis? The answer, like the opiate itself, was a slow, insidious shift, a gradual dawning of awareness that unfolded over years, not months. Initially, the use of heroin, particularly in the artistic and bohemian circles of Paris, was viewed with a degree of tolerance, even a certain romanticism. The allure of the drug was intricately woven into the fabric of the era. Its whispered promises of heightened creativity and sensory experience resonated with a generation seeking escape from the harsh realities of post-war life. The hushed conversations in smoky cafes, the clandestine meetings in dimly lit ateliers, these formed a hidden undercurrent, a secret society bound by their shared experience. The texture of their clandestine meetings, the hushed tones, the furtive glances, all contributed to the mystique surrounding the drug. The early accounts often depict a sense of ambiguity, a blurring of the lines between experimentation and addiction. The descriptions of the initial experience, a gentle warmth, a heightened sense of perception, are frequently recounted with a certain wistful nostalgia, a melancholic longing for a lost paradise. These early narratives, often found in personal diaries and letters, provide a glimpse into a world where the boundaries of acceptable behavior were fluid, where the pursuit of artistic expression often pushed the limits of social norms. The scent of opium, clinging to the velvet curtains of a bohemian salon, the faint aroma mingling with the perfume of women and the scent of aging books, became a symbol of this era, an olfactory marker of both transgression and artistic inspiration. However, as the years progressed, a subtle change began to occur. The initial tolerance gradually eroded, replaced by a growing unease, a creeping awareness of the devastating consequences of addiction. Medical reports, initially sparse and often dismissive, became more frequent and more alarming. Doctors, initially puzzled by the phenomenon, began to grapple with the complex nature of opiate dependence. Their clinical notes reflecting a growing concern, the texture of these reports shifted, becoming more detailed, more urgent, the stark language reflecting the gravity of the situation. The meticulous observations, the precise descriptions of withdrawal symptoms, the gradual deterioration of the physical and mental health of the addicts, these documents paint a bleak picture of human suffering, a stark contrast to the romanticized portrayals found in earlier accounts. The shift in public perception was gradual, a slow awakening to the harsh realities of the crisis. Newspapers, initially hesitant to address the issue, began to publish articles, albeit cautiously, focusing on the societal implications of the growing addiction rate. The tactile quality of newsprint, still slightly rough compared to modern paper, carried the gravity of these articles, highlighting the increasing number of deaths from overdoses and the mounting social costs. The tone, however, remained ambivalent, caught between a lingering fascination and a growing apprehension. The photographs accompanying these articles, often grainy and poorly lit, nevertheless captured a sense of the despair that characterized the era, the hollow-eyed gaze of addicts, a silent testament to the pervasive nature of the problem. The changing social attitudes weren't just reflected in the medical journals and newspapers. They manifested in the changing social dynamics of Parisian society itself. The initial sense of tolerance began to give way to stigmatization. The addicts increasingly marginalized, their lives reduced to shadows in the alleyways and back streets of the city. The feel of the damp, cold stone beneath their feet, the chilling breath of the winter wind, became constant reminders of their isolation. The initial romanticized view slowly morphed into one of fear and condemnation, the addicts becoming scapegoats, their struggles viewed with a mixture of pity and disdain. This transformation in social attitudes also found expression in the legal realm. While the initial regulatory measures were lax, a gradual tightening of the laws governing the sale and distribution of opium and heroin marked a significant shift in governmental policy. The official documents, meticulously crafted and stamped with the seals of authority, bear witness to this evolving approach. The stiff, formal language of these documents stands in sharp contrast to the informal, often poetic narratives of the addicts themselves. The texture of the official paper, crisp and formal, reflects the bureaucratic nature of the response, while the handwritten accounts speak of a far more human, visceral experience. The shift in social attitudes, therefore, was not a sudden revolution but a gradual evolution, a complex interplay of shifting perceptions, evolving medical understanding, and changing social dynamics. The slow unfolding of this change is mirrored in the changing texture of the historical record itself, from the romanticized accounts of the early years to the more clinical and increasingly concerned descriptions that emerged later. As the night deepens, let the understanding of this gradual process settle into the quiet of your mind, preparing you for peaceful sleep, the sounds of the city fading, the rhythm of your breath slowing, the warmth of your bed enfolding you. Sleep now. The initial governmental response to the burgeoning opium crisis in Paris was, to put it mildly, hesitant. The whispers of addiction, initially dismissed as the excesses of a bohemian fringe, gradually grew into a louder, more insistent murmur. The early attempts at regulation felt almost perfunctory, a series of half-hearted measures reflecting a prevailing societal ambivalence. Imagine, if you will, the smooth, almost cool texture of official decrees printed on thick government-issue paper, their edges crisp and precise. These early documents, often stained faintly yellow with age, bear witness to a time of uncertainty, their language cautious, their directives vague. The embossed seals, weighty and official, offered little reassurance. They were more a symbol of authority struggling to assert itself than a powerful instrument of control. The challenge lay not just in the enforcement of these nascent regulations, but in the very definition of the problem. The understanding of addiction itself was in its infancy. The medical literature of the time, a collection of bound volumes with brittle spines and pages yellowed by time, reflects this uncertainty. The feel of these aged papers, their delicate texture whispering tales of forgotten debates, suggests the fragility of the knowledge base upon which these early regulations were built. Doctors, grappling with a phenomenon they scarcely understood, offered conflicting diagnoses and contradictory treatments. Their handwritten notes, often scrawled in hurried script across hastily penned prescriptions, seemed to mirror the chaotic nature of the crisis itself. The ink, long faded to a ghostly gray, only hints at the intensity of the discussions, the urgency of the evolving understanding. The very nature of the drug itself contributed to the difficulties in regulation. Opium, with its diverse uses in legitimate medicine, was difficult to distinguish from its illicit counterpart. Imagine the subtle scent of opium, faint yet persistent, clinging to the shelves of pharmacies, its aroma intertwined with the smell of medicinal herbs and astringent tinctures. This pervasive presence made the task of distinguishing legitimate use from abuse incredibly complex, creating loopholes that were readily exploited. The task of tracking its passage from the distant poppy fields to the hidden dens of Paris presented logistical nightmares. Official records, meticulous in their detail yet inadequate in their scope, paint a picture of this struggle, the bureaucratic wheels turning slowly, often failing to keep pace with the swift currents of the illicit trade. The evolving social attitudes further complicated matters. The initial romanticized view of opium use, prevalent amongst certain artistic circles, gradually gave way to a more critical perspective. Newspapers, initially hesitant to report on the crisis, began to publish articles that reflected this shifting sentiment. The feel of the newsprint, rougher than today's paper, conveys the sense of urgency. Yet, even these articles often reflected the complexities of public opinion, often caught between a lingering fascination and an increasing awareness of the devastating consequences. Photographs accompanying these reports, grainy and dimly lit, capture the despair, the gaunt faces of addicts, a stark contrast to the earlier idealized portrayals. These images, imbued with a certain melancholic beauty, nonetheless convey the gravity of the situation, a quiet testament to the destructive power of addiction. As the years progressed, the government's response became increasingly stringent. The regulations, initially lax and unenforced, began to evolve, reflecting a growing awareness of the scale of the problem. Subsequent official documents, thicker and more detailed, reveal this shift. The language became firmer, more direct, reflecting a determined effort to combat the crisis. The texture of the paper itself, thicker and more resistant to age, speaks of the growing resolve. New laws were passed aimed at restricting the import and sale of opium and its derivatives. The meticulous detail in these new laws suggests a shift in focus from a vague sense of societal unease to a targeted approach aimed at controlling the supply. However, even these stronger measures struggled to overcome the entrenched networks of the illicit drug trade, highlighting the immense difficulty in stemming the tide of addiction. The weight of these documents, their permanence, represents the slow, heavy process of governmental response, a process characterized by both hesitation and increasing resolve. The struggle against addiction in 1920s Paris was a slow, complex dance between societal perception, evolving medical understanding, and the ever-present challenges of law enforcement. The gradual hardening of governmental resolve, mirrored in the changing texture and tone of official documents, is a testament to the long and arduous fight against a problem that continues to present immense challenges even today. The silence of these documents, their quiet authority, allows us to contemplate the intricate nature of the issue, preparing us for the quietude of sleep, the weight of history settling upon you, gently as the sounds of the city fade into the distance. Sleep now. The tightening of regulations, however, did not mark a swift end to the Parisian opium dream. The decline was gradual, a slow ebbing of the tide, marked by subtle shifts in social attitudes and the persistent, insidious nature of addiction itself. Consider the changing landscape of the city itself. The bustling cafes, once vibrant hubs of artistic and intellectual exchange, where opium dens often operated discreetly in their shadows, began to subtly alter their character. The rich scent of roasted coffee beans, once mingling with the faint, almost imperceptible aroma of opium, now dominated the air, a silent testament to the shifting social dynamics. The hushed conversations, once punctuated by the occasional languid sigh of an opium user, were replaced by the more animated chatter of a changing clientele. The very textures of these cafes changed. The worn velvet of the seating, once bearing the imprint of countless habitués, gradually gave way to newer, crisper fabrics. The economic downturn of the late 1920s played a significant role in this shift. The extravagant lifestyles fueled by the boom years became increasingly unsustainable. The cost of opium, always high, became a prohibitive expense for many, forcing a contraction in the market. Imagine the weight of these economic realities pressing down on individuals, the tangible anxieties reflected in the increasing fragility of their social structures. The carefully crafted illusions of opulence began to crumble under the weight of financial hardship. The once vibrant artistic community, heavily reliant on patronage and fluctuating income, found themselves increasingly vulnerable to economic pressures. The bohemian ideal, so often intertwined with the opium haze, began to lose its luster, replaced by the stark realities of survival. The hand-stitched tapestries adorning the walls of certain salons, their vibrant threads once reflecting the exuberant spirit of the era, now appeared muted, almost faded, reflecting the dimming of the artistic flame. The once bright colors of these tapestries, now dimmed by time, are a silent witness to this subtle shift in the artistic and economic landscape. The evolving medical understanding of addiction also contributed to the decline. the early uncertain diagnoses gave way to a more nuanced understanding of the physiological and psychological aspects of dependence. Medical texts, while still containing a degree of uncertainty, began to reflect this increased awareness. The weighty tomes, once filled with contradictory theories and experimental treatments, started to feature a more structured approach to therapy, albeit still in its nascent stages. The feel of these newly printed pages, their crisp edges and vibrant ink contrasting sharply with the earlier volumes, reflected the growing confidence within the medical community. The careful notations in the doctor's case files, meticulously documented, reveal a growing attention to detail. The careful observation of patients' responses to treatment, suggesting a more systematic approach to understanding and addressing the issue. Simultaneously, societal perceptions shifted. The initial romanticization of opium use, largely confined to certain artistic circles, began to crumble under the weight of increasing public awareness of its devastating consequences. Newspaper articles, once hesitant and vaguely sensationalist, adopted a more measured, informative tone. The rough texture of newsprint, previously used to convey the feverish excitement of the era, became a more reliable vehicle for presenting sobering facts and statistics, reflecting the changing public discourse surrounding opium addiction. The photographs accompanying these articles, while still lacking the sharp clarity of modern images, began to depict the harsh reality of addiction with greater accuracy, showcasing the physical and emotional toll. The grainy, shadowy images, no longer romanticized, reflected the true impact of opium addiction, a stark reminder of the human cost. The government's response, while slow to initially gain momentum, became increasingly effective. The strengthened laws, coupled with improvements in law enforcement, gradually tightened the noose around the opium trade. The official documents, once thin and sparsely worded, grew thicker and more detailed, revealing a systematic attempt to control the supply chain. The weight of these documents, the solidity of the paper stock, speaks volumes about the growing resolve and commitment. The meticulous detail contained within these documents, the careful recording of seizures, the tracking of individuals involved in the trade, reflects a determined approach. The heavier weight of the later documents, their firm and substantial feel, represents the increasing efficiency of enforcement efforts. The ink used, increasingly consistent and professional, suggests a clear and definite approach reflecting the evolution of legal processes involved. The decline of the opium craze in Paris was not a sudden collapse, but a slow, gradual process, marked by subtle yet significant shifts in economic conditions, medical understanding, and public opinion. It was a complex interplay of factors, a slow dance between societal forces and governmental intervention. A testament to the enduring challenge of combating addiction, the quiet whisper of history, contained within these documents, invites us to reflect upon this intricate process. The gradual fading of a once vibrant dream, a quiet fading of the lights, leading us to the peaceful stillness of sleep. Sleep now. The quiet fading of the Parisian opium dream left behind a complex legacy, woven into the very fabric of the city's social and cultural landscape. Consider the artists, their lives indelibly marked by the experience. Their canvases, once infused with the hazy, dreamlike quality of opium's influence, gradually shifted in style. The bold strokes and vibrant colors, characteristic of the era's early exuberance, began to yield to a more subdued palette. Imagine the texture of these later works. The paint, perhaps laid on with a hesitant hand, lacks the confident sweep of its predecessors. The very grain of the canvas, subtly altered by time and neglect, speaks volumes about the changing artistic sensibilities. The hushed tones, the muted hues, reflect a profound internal shift, a quiet reckoning with the past. These paintings, now displayed in hushed museum galleries, hold a quiet story, a story of lost dreams and hard-won clarity. The weight of their silence, the subtle texture of the paint, tells a tale beyond the brushstrokes themselves. The writers, too, bore the scars of the opium era. Their prose, once imbued with a lyrical, almost ethereal quality, now took on a different character. Think of the feel of their manuscripts, the weight of the paper, the slightly uneven ink strokes reflecting the wavering hand of the writer. These subtle imperfections, a testament to their struggles, are palpable, a quiet witness to the human cost of addiction. The once effortless flow of language, imbued with a languid grace, now displays a newfound sobriety, a reflective quality, the words painstakingly chosen, reflecting a careful consideration of meaning and impact. The pages themselves, yellowed with age, hold the whisper of a changed world. The slow, deliberate pacing of their later writings suggests a different kind of rhythm, a different kind of life. The impact extended beyond the artistic community. The social fabric of Paris, once woven with the threads of bohemian indulgence, began to mend itself, though the scars remained. The cafes, once the havens of opium dens, underwent a transformation. The once familiar scent of opium smoke, a pervasive aroma clinging to the velvet upholstery, slowly faded, replaced by the simpler smells of coffee and freshly baked bread. The weight of the air itself seemed to change, lightening as the haze dissipated, the lingering scent of the past slowly fading into memory. The chipped porcelain cups, once stained with the residue of countless opium dreams, were gradually replaced with newer, cleaner sets, reflecting a conscious effort to cleanse the atmosphere, to erase the lingering traces of the past. The sound of quiet conversation, once punctuated by the occasional cough or sigh of an opium user, became more distinct, less burdened. Even the structure of social gatherings began to evolve. The clandestine meetings, once veiled in secrecy, slowly gave way to more open, more transparent interactions. The very architecture of Paris retained its scars, the buildings that once housed the opium dens and brothels. Their weathered stone, their shadowed doorways remained, but their function transformed. Imagine tracing your fingers over the rough texture of these buildings, imagining the stories held within those silent walls. The quiet hum of the city, once interwoven with the whispers of addiction, shifted. A subtle but meaningful alteration. The echoes of laughter and hushed conversations from within those establishments remained, a poignant reminder of a bygone era. The legacy, however, was not simply one of decline. The crisis spurred advancements in medicine and public health. The development of new treatment approaches, while still nascent, signaled a growing awareness of the complexities of addiction. The medical journals themselves, once filled with theoretical speculations, began to document practical case studies, charting progress and setbacks with a careful attention to detail. The crisp, clean pages of these journals, a testament to scientific progress, presented a stark contrast to the hazy world of opium indulgence. The evolving understanding of addiction became a catalyst for social reform, leading to improved regulations and more compassionate approaches to treatment. The government archives, once filled with fragmented reports and incomplete data, began to reflect a more organized and systematic approach to tackling the problem. The heavy tomes meticulously documenting seizures, arrests, and rehabilitation efforts became silent witnesses to this slow, steady shift in societal attitudes. The lasting legacy of Paris's opium dream is not a singular narrative of tragedy or triumph, but a complex tapestry woven from threads of human experience, social change, and medical advancement. It is a story of resilience, of adaptation, and of the enduring human capacity to overcome adversity. The quiet hush of the past, the whisper of history, gently guides us toward a peaceful rest, towards the embrace of slumber. Sleep now. The lasting legacy of Paris's opium dream is not a singular narrative of tragedy or triumph, but a complex tapestry woven from threads of human experience, social change, and medical advancement. Consider the texture of these threads, the subtle variations in their weave. Some are coarse and rough, reflecting the harsh realities of addiction and its devastating consequences. Others are fine and delicate, hinting at the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for healing. Still others are lustrous and shimmering, reflecting the advancements in medical understanding and the gradual evolution of societal attitudes. Think of the hushed conversations in the newly renovated cafes, the clinking of porcelain cups now free from the lingering scent of opium. Imagine the feel of the smooth, clean surfaces, a stark contrast to the worn, opium-stained furniture of the past. The air itself seems lighter, the shadows less oppressive. The weight of the past, once a suffocating blanket, gradually lifts, allowing a gentler light to filter through. The artists, once lost in a haze of opiate-induced dreams, found new paths. Their canvases, once imbued with the swirling, chaotic energy of addiction, now reveal a newfound clarity, a meditative stillness. Examine the brushstrokes closely. Note the careful placement of each color, the deliberate control of the hand. These are paintings born not of fleeting visions, but of conscious reflection, of a painstakingly rebuilt equilibrium. The slow, measured rhythm of their creations mirrors the steady pace of recovery, the deliberate steps taken towards a more balanced life. Their palettes, once dominated by dark, brooding hues, now incorporate lighter shades, softer tones, a quiet testament to the healing process. The writers, too, found their way back to the page, their words now infused with a different kind of grace. The rhythm of their prose, once languid and dreamlike, has evolved into something more deliberate, more precise. Feel the weight of the paper, the texture of the ink, almost tangible remnants of their struggle and eventual triumph. The manuscripts, once scattered and haphazard, are now meticulously organized, reflecting the internal order they have painstakingly cultivated. The pages themselves, yellowed with age, whisper of resilience, of the quiet strength it takes to rebuild a life shattered by addiction. The very act of writing, once a clouded escape, now serves as a form of catharsis, a way of processing and understanding the past. The impact extended far beyond the artistic community. The social fabric of Paris, once frayed by the epidemic, began to mend. The city's very architecture bears witness to this transformation. Buildings that once harbored opium dens now house shops and apartments, their shadowed doorways now bathed in the sunlight of a new era. The rhythmic beat of Parisian life, once overlaid with the somber undertones of addiction, gradually returned to its natural harmony. The sound of the city, once punctuated by the coughs and whispers of opium users, is now enriched by the laughter of children, the chatter of cafe patrons, and the hum of daily life. The legacy of this era is not simply a narrative of darkness, but also a story of light. The crisis prompted advancements in medicine and public health. The medical journals, once filled with speculative theories, now present meticulous case studies, charting the progress made in understanding and treating addiction. The crisp, clean pages reflect a growing awareness, a commitment to scientific rigor, and a genuine desire to help those struggling with substance abuse. Examine the government archives, those weighty volumes containing official records of seizures, arrests, and rehabilitation efforts. Note the meticulous handwriting, the carefully organized documents, a testament to the evolving approach to tackling the problem of addiction. These archives bear silent witness to a long, slow process of learning and adaptation, of gradually shifting societal attitudes and developing more compassionate treatment methods. The transition wasn't immediate or complete. There were setbacks, relapses, and lingering challenges. The evolving understanding of addiction, spurred by the Parisian crisis, led to improved regulations and treatment approaches. The sterile precision of medical reports offers a stark contrast to the hazy world of opium indulgence. The methodical nature of these archives, the precise details documented within, speak to a concerted effort to understand and address a complex social issue. This meticulous attention to detail, this dedication to accurate record-keeping, is itself a testament to the profound impact of the crisis and the determined response it provoked. The story of Paris's opium dream is a multifaceted narrative of hope and despair, resilience and relapse, progress and setbacks. It is a human story, filled with individual struggles and societal responses. Its echoes linger in the quiet corners of Parisian streets, in the hushed tones of museum galleries, and in the carefully preserved pages of medical journals and government archives. It reminds us of the fragility of the human condition and the enduring capacity for recovery, for growth, for change. And as you listen to the quiet whispers of history, as you feel the weight of the past gently lifting, allow yourself to drift into the embrace of sleep. Sleep now.